France is facing a political chaos that could redefine its future and that of Europe. With President Emmanuel Macron's popularity plummeting and the right gaining strength rapidly, dissatisfied French citizens are taking to the streets in protest. Watch until the end to understand the crisis shaking France and the geopolitical consequences of this event worldwide. The political crisis in France has its roots in the recent elections and the controversial actions of President Emmanuel Macron. Following a significant victory for the National Rally in the European Parliament elections, Macron decided to dissolve the French Parliament and call for new elections, arguing that the current Parliament no longer represented the wishes of the French people, hoping to form a more centrist coalition. However, this strategy failed. In the first round of the subsequent elections, the National Rally, led by Marine Le Pen, secured 33.4% of the votes, while the left-wing New Popular Front garnered 28%, and Macron's centrist bloc only managed 20%. This was a resounding defeat for Macron, highlighting the growing polarization and discontent in French politics. The rise of the National Rally signifies a significant shift in the French political landscape. This right-wing party, often described as far-right, is known for its anti-immigration, Eurosceptic, and anti-environmentalist policies. They advocate for less interference from the European Union and a strengthening of French nationalism. The increasing popularity of this party reflects the sentiment among many French citizens that Macron's policies are not addressing their needs and concerns. With the National Rally potentially becoming the dominant force in the French Parliament, France stands on the brink of a political transformation that could weaken the European Union and drastically change its internal policies. But what exactly led to Macron's decline in popularity? What were the key factors behind this dramatic shift? Emmanuel Macron's popularity began to decline significantly during his second year in office, primarily due to his economic and social policies. The labour and pension reforms he implemented were perceived as favouring corporate interests and the wealthy, alienating the working class and unions. The tipping point was his attempt to reform the pension system, which triggered massive strikes and paralysed the country for weeks. These actions contributed to the perception that Macron was a president for the rich, disconnected from the needs and realities of ordinary citizens. In addition to these unpopular policies, Macron's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic was widely criticised. The implementation of restrictive measures such as lockdowns and curfews led to frustration and exhaustion among the population. The slow vaccine rollout and often confusing government communication exacerbated the discontent. These failures were skillfully exploited by the opposition, who used the health crisis as a platform to attack Macron's competence and leadership. The result was a constant erosion of his support base, with many voters turning to political alternatives that promised more significant change. The dissatisfaction with Macron culminated in the recent European Parliament elections, where his party suffered a significant defeat. These election results prompted Macron to dissolve the French Parliament and call for new elections in France, hoping to reconfigure the political landscape in his favour. However, this strategy backfired, resulting in a humiliating defeat for his party. The inability to form a strong and cohesive coalition in Parliament reflected not only a rejection of his policies, but also a desire for radical change among voters. The rise of the National Rally and other right-wing parties underscores this shift in the political tide. But what exactly is the French right, and how did it gain such strength so quickly? The indecision of the French population was evident in the last presidential election. Emmanuel Macron was re-elected primarily because he was seen as the more moderate option among the left and right-wing candidates. At that time, many French voters were reluctant to support more extreme alternatives from either side, and Macron seemed the safest choice. However, this re-election was not an enthusiastic endorsement of his policies, but rather a vote against extreme polarization. The rise of the right in France has been a phenomenon unfolding over the past few years, culminating in surprising electoral results. The National Rally, led by Marine Le Pen, has emerged as the main force behind this shift. With a platform centred on anti-immigration, Eurosceptic, and anti-environmentalist policies, the party managed to capture the discontent of a significant portion of the French population. Promising a return to nationalism and a reduction in European Union influence, Le Pen and her party effectively exploited the economic and social frustrations felt by many French citizens. The growth of the National Rally was not accidental, but rather the result of a well-orchestrated strategy. The party focused on rural areas and small towns, where feelings of abandonment and perceptions that Macron's government favoured urban elites were strongest. Additionally, they used rhetoric of cultural protection and national security, resonating with voters concerned about immigration and terrorism. Le Pen's ability to soften the party's image, distancing it from far-right connotations and presenting it as a viable alternative to the political establishment, was also crucial to her success. The French right, especially the National Rally, capitalized not only on discontent with Macron, but also on the failures of traditional left and right-wing parties. With socialists and republicans fragmented and unable to form a cohesive opposition, the field was open for a new player. Le Pen's message, combining economic nationalism with a severe critique of EU policies, found fertile ground among disenchanted voters. This combination of factors allowed the National Rally not only to gain votes, but also to significantly expand its parliamentary support base. With their advance in parliamentary elections, the National Rally has moved from a marginal party to a dominant force in French politics. The possibility of forming a government without the need for complex alliances became real, posing a direct threat to the political status quo. The victory of Le Pen and other right-wing parties in the first round signified more than just a change of guard. It was a clear signal of a paradigm shift in French politics. Do you think the centre-left should remain in power, or is the right the best solution for France now? Share your opinion in the comments. And what will be the implications of this change for the European Union? And how might this transformation impact the future of the European bloc? The rise of the right in France represents a significant challenge for the European Union. Marine Le Pen's party has a clearly Eurosceptic stance, advocating for less interference from Brussels and more national autonomy. Should the National Rally consolidate its power, we could see a France less committed to EU policies and more focused on its national interests. This could weaken EU cohesion, especially in areas like immigration and climate change, where France has traditionally played a leading role. Furthermore, the shift in French politics could inspire similar movements in other member countries, increasing anti-EU sentiment across the continent. France has been influenced by Italy's Eurosceptic stance, particularly with the rise of Giorgia Meloni from the Brothers of Italy party. Now, with France following a similar path, there is growing potential for other countries to reassess their relationship with the European Union. This scenario could lead to fragmentation within the bloc, making it difficult to implement unified policies and respond collectively to economic and geopolitical crises. The growing influence of Eurosceptic parties could weaken EU institutions, resulting in a more fragmented and less effective union. Finally, the change in France's stance could also affect economic and trade relations within the European Union. As one of the bloc's largest economies, France plays a crucial role in shaping economic and fiscal policies. A right-wing France with a nationalist and protectionist agenda might resist trade agreements and economic integration initiatives, creating tensions with other member states that favour cooperation and open markets. Additionally, how might this political transformation in France affect its role in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine? Marine Le Pen's victory in the first round of the French legislative elections has raised crucial questions about the future of French support for Ukraine. With a parliament now dominated by a party known for its pro-Russia stance, many are wondering how this political shift might impact France's assistance to Ukraine. During the crisis leading up to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Emmanuel Macron played a prominent role in diplomatic efforts. His famous visit to the Kremlin, where he was received by Vladimir Putin at a table over 4 meters long, symbolized his effort to avert the conflict. However, these efforts were in vain, leaving Macron in a weakened position both internally and externally. With the onset of the war, Macron drastically changed his stance, becoming one of Ukraine's strongest advocates on the international stage. French support materialized in the form of advanced weapon systems, such as Caesar howitzers and Scalp missiles. In February 2024, Macron surprised the world by suggesting that no option should be off the table to ensure Ukraine's victory, including the deployment of French soldiers. This declaration provoked a wave of reactions, with some countries supporting the idea, while others, like Germany and the United States, firmly rejected the possibility of sending troops. The rise of Le Pen and her party cast doubt on the continuation of this robust support. Although Le Pen and her likely Prime Minister, Jordan Bardella, have stated that they will maintain some level of support for Ukraine, they have also made it clear that they strongly oppose the deployment of French troops. In France's semi-presidential system, Macron still holds control over defence issues as President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, giving him the leeway to continue supporting Ukraine. However, the parliament, dominated by Le Pen's party, controls the necessary finances for this support and could indirectly interfere by delaying or blocking the release of funds. Given all these issues, what was Macron's real intention in calling for new elections? Despite it being predictable that the French parliamentary elections would reflect the results of the European Parliament elections, Emmanuel Macron decided to call for new elections. Macron's intention was clear. He wanted to draw attention to the threat posed by the rise of the far right and mobilize the moderate parties and the public. By calling new elections, Macron hoped to mobilize a centrist coalition that could counter the advance of the national rally. However, this was a risky gamble. Instead of uniting the moderates, Macron's maneuver did not generate the immediate mobilization needed, resulting in the right's victory in the first round. To combat the rise of the right, Macron proposed the formation of a Republican alliance. This alliance would be a coalition of centre and left parties unified against extremism, both from the right and the left. The idea was to create a cohesive political bloc that could resist the divisive policies of the national rally and promote an agenda of unity and stability. Macron made a direct appeal to moderate parties, emphasizing the need to protect French democracy from movements he considered undemocratic and potentially destabilizing. However, forming such a broad alliance is a significant challenge. The centre and left parties have their own agendas and interests, and uniting these forces requires delicate concessions and negotiations. Additionally, there is deep distrust between some of these parties, exacerbated by political disputes in recent years. Nonetheless, Macron believes that this alliance is essential to prevent France from falling into the hands of the far right. But how is the French population reacting to these dramatic changes? And what does this mean for the country's political future? Since the results of the first round of elections on June 30th, 2024, France has witnessed a growing wave of protests. Thousands of people have taken to the streets to express their discontent with the right-wing victory, especially in cities such as Paris, Lyon, Bordeaux, and Toulouse. The protests have been a mix of peaceful demonstrations and violent clashes with the police, resulting in several arrests and reports of vandalism and arson. The protesters, mainly from left-wing movements and civil organizations, have voiced concerns about the rightward shift and its potential impact on social policies and civil rights. Macron's strategy of calling for new elections seems to be starting to take effect, at least in terms of mobilizing the population against the far right. In recent days, there has been a significant increase in participation in protests, with many citizens and moderate parties uniting to form a common front against the national rally. Several centre and left parties have withdrawn their candidacies in certain regions, supporting candidates with a better chance of defeating the right. This unification movement has the potential to change the political landscape in the upcoming elections, highlighting a growing resistance against the rise of the far right in France. The political crisis in France represents a decisive moment for the future of the country. The rise of the far right and the decline in Emmanuel Macron's popularity reveal deep popular dissatisfaction and growing polarization. Macron's strategy of calling for new elections and forming a Republican alliance is a desperate attempt to curb the right's advance. But the results of the first round have shown that this tactic may not be sufficient. With massive protests occurring in various cities and the population mobilizing against the far right, there are signs that popular resistance could influence the results of the second round. The outcome of this situation will be decided in the second round of legislative elections, scheduled for next Sunday, the 7th of July, 2024. Until then, France remains in a state of tension and uncertainty, with the country's political future hanging in the balance. The result of these elections will not only determine the balance of power in France, but also have significant repercussions for the European Union and the country's relationship with Ukraine. As the world watches closely, France stands on the brink of a transformation that could redefine its role on the global stage and its internal stability in the coming years. What is your opinion on the matter? Can the centre and left unite to improve France's situation, or is it time for a conservative right to determine the country's direction? Let us know what you think in the comments. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel What is Happening. Also, make sure to watch these other 2 videos currently on the screen. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.